Very much thank everyone for getting on today. If you would do me the favor of putting yourself on mute, at least for a little while. We'll certainly have some time for questions later on, and then we can unmute. But hopefully, having largely folk on mute will improve the sound quality for everyone. So again, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the call today. What I wanted to do was to just spend a few minutes to talk about really the next steps for the momentum approach and what it is that where we are with this process and where it is that we see things unfolding over the next few weeks and months. So I kind of wanted to talk about that and talk about some work that we would like you to undertake, and then sure enough, I'll hand over to Jonathan, who can talk about the kind of the basic logistics of all of that and exactly what we're asking of you, and sure there'll be time for questions at the end. First thing I wanted to do is just really to sort of clarify exactly what this momentum approach is and exactly how we are thinking about it in relationship to the momentum year. So everyone, I'm sure probably everybody across Georgia has now at some point seen this slide with the subliminal brownie behind it, and so we know what the aspects of the momentum year are. They are, sure enough, this idea of every student's making that specific program choice, that as they do that, then we guide them along a clear and as full a pathway as possible across their first year, that they sure enough in that first year take courses that enable them to feel that they're studying what they thought they chose, and then we get them off to a good foundational beginning in English and math, and then all of that is wrapped around by an understanding of how it is that we can understand them as learners, how they interact with the learning environment around them, and how by better understanding that we can enable them to be successful. So many thanks again to everyone who has worked so hard to put all of the work for the momentum year in place for this coming year. Of course, what we always knew was that the working with the first year was, in many ways, the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. And so what we've now done is to broaden that work out, to take the work of the momentum year as a strong and powerful foundation, but now to broaden that work out across the student experience. And so we've taken each of the elements of the momentum year and broaden that paradigm out, that sure enough, when a student chooses their particular program or one of their academic focus areas, that is one of a whole sequence of different important deliberate choices that a student needs to make as they work their way through their degree program. That understanding the academic mindset challenges of a freshman are part and parcel of a much broader set of understandings that we need to understand as students work their way through their degree programs. That, yeah, taking 30 hours in your first year is one thing, but it's, again, emblematic of much of a larger amount of work that needs to be undertaken to guide students along a clear pathway all the way from admission all the way to graduation, and indeed further than that, shaking the president's hand when they graduate, shaking their employer's hand when they begin their first career, and perhaps even further than that. That's the enabling students to feel like they're studying what they thought they chose is one aspect of heightening academic engagement, but there are many others, and I know many of you have been working hard around high impact practices like undergraduate research and service learning and study abroad, and many other kinds of ways in which we really can connect students with their particular direction of study. And then English and math are simply the first two of a whole sequence of different particular critical milestones. And so that's the idea of the momentum approach, to broaden out the work that we've undertaken in the momentum year. And I hope that you can see, partly because of the little diagram, but partly just because you've been so involved in the work, you can see how the work that we've undertaken in the momentum year sort of fits within this paradigm structure. So Well, what I now want you to do is to begin to think about that paradigm structure, this momentum approach, but in a much broader sense of the student experience than we have up until now. Up until now, really largely the momentum year has really been about activities that have happened either structurally or really involved in some sort of a curricular design. What I now want us to do is to begin to think about this work in a much fuller sense. So first of all, really across the full length of the student experience, all the way from admission, all the way through, as I say, to graduation and career. And of course, we have some of those pieces in place that we have been, I think, for the last 2 years talking about this idea of Catapult classes with gateways to completion and the way in which that helps us to understand progress in the milestones that students work their way through their programs. I've already talked about high impact practices, and USG Goes Global is one of many different kinds of initiatives we have underway around using different kinds of engaging pedagogy. So USG Goes Global goes right there in sort of the engagement row, if you like. And then, emblematic of this work then is on this pathways idea, that looking at students right at the end of their pathway, perhaps students who have completed 90 hours. What happens to them? What are the challenges between substantially completing the large majority of your degree and actually finishing out? And so there is this interesting statistic that students who complete 90 hours, largely speaking, they graduate, but they don't graduate quite as quickly when they reach 90 hours as we might have expected. It still typically takes them a couple of years across our system. But sure enough is, again, part and parcel of that general paradigm when it is applied to this idea across the length of student experience. But that isn't the only dimension of this work that I think we want to undertake. We also want to undertake this work across the breadth of student experience. So I think maybe the easiest example of this work for us to get our hands around is the new No More, Borrow Less efforts in really enabling students to make a deliberate and purposeful choice around their financial well-being. So this really is one aspect of what we hope will be a whole sequence of work around financial well-being, financial aid, and financial literacy, enabling students to deliberately choose exactly what kinds of amounts of money they need to borrow to be successful in their studies. This is one aspect of that, but you can already see that there's also work in understanding sort of a financial pathway to really connect the pathway of curricular study with the finances of a student needing to study that pathway. Maybe they're understanding really what the critical milestones are for students as they walk through their financial journey with us. All of that has to be undertaken through the viewpoint of financial aid when looked at through this lens of the momentum approach. And then, of course, not but 6 or 7 months ago, we came together to think about a new approach to student transitions. And in many ways, that sort of hits that whole, just all across the spectrum of this new momentum approach paradigm, from enabling students to make a deliberate choice about their program and connecting it with careers, to intrusive advising and ways in which that has aspects of different kinds of belonging and mindset aspects, creating a pathway which does not end at the end of the first week, but ends in many ways bringing students back at the beginning of their second year, and all of the other aspects of that transition from not college to college that I know you have been thinking so broadly about. That really is thinking about this idea of student transition by thinking about it using this new momentum approach paradigm. So across the length of student experience, across the breadth of student experience, and as a mathematician, you can imagine where I'm going next. And this is now the third dimension of the hierarchy, thinking about this from a system perspective all the way through institution and program and course. And I know that many of you were at Momentum Summit 2 And so you saw your department chairs and deans, we engaged them really in thinking about this work from the viewpoint of their particular program. How do you engage with purpose and mindset and pathway and engagement and milestones from the vantage point of undertaking a program? And you've seen this as we've unfolded, that this is work that's already happening, ideas around purpose in the courses that students are taking. The Nexus degree in many ways is about exactly engaging in the idea of purpose in the design of a degree, many other things too. And the new work that we're doing in Math Pathways, the new statistics pathway that many schools will be piloting this fall and spring and the following fall. This is really about understanding these aspects of the momentum approach across this hierarchy of from system to course. So that's the momentum approach. And so what I'm asking, we sort of began to ask you to do at the Momentum Summit 2, and now what I would like to re-engage you in the work is really to begin to think about things that are already happening on your campus and ways in which you can begin to look at them through this new lens, through this new paradigm. And so that's what we will be asking of you to give us what we'll call a momentum approach development plan, and we would like to have that document the beginning of June, so in I guess about 6 weeks' time. Well, what I want to stress is that in many ways we're not asking you to undertake anything that's completely new here. But what we would like for you to do is to look hard at the work that is already underway on your campus, and to begin to look at that work that you are already doing, but look at it now through this new paradigm lens. The advantage then is that you will, I believe, to be able to find ways in which you can connect work that's already underway with work that is already underway with the momentum year, that to make those connections in a deeper way. You know, one of the things that I've really noticed a lot over the last year are how often faculty have said to me, well, you know, we see about the momentum year, but we don't really see how gateways to completion fits, or we don't see how the TS3 high impact practice fits with the momentum year, or we don't see how no more borrow less fits, or, you know, and so there is perhaps sometimes in people's minds this sort of hodgepodge of different important initiatives, but they don't see how they all fit together. I think under this new paradigm umbrella, we can really begin to make much deeper connections and help people to see how this works really does all fit together and is all coalescing behind a single aim. But I believe it also will be the case that looking at things through this new lens may actually provide some new opportunities to do work we hadn't envisaged in the past. Actually, the No More Borrow Less initiative is a good example of that. When that really began, I think we certainly believed that it was going to be an effort in trying to help students simply know about how much money they had borrowed. And gradually, as we began to look at it through this lens of the momentum approach, we began to see that there's a substantially richer amount of efforts that we can bring to bear, which really will allow us to make a strong connection between financial well-being and student success and how important that might be. So what we're going to be asking you to do is to create this momentum approach development plan, a description of a particular issue, a particular problem, particular work that's happening on your campus, what the current situation is, what it is that you believe you're trying to, problem you're trying to address, and then ways in which you'll be able to plot your progress. What is some kind of evaluation process that you can bring to bear here to, on the one hand, evaluate what the current situation is, and also to measure progress that you might be making by undertaking the new ways of thinking about it, your plan for change, and then lastly, how it is that plan for change now lives within this momentum approach. So this is what we'll be asking of you for this momentum approach development plan. And as I say, we're asking that to come into the office by June the 15th. So with that, I will hand over to Jonathan to see if he has any sort of specific logistical points he wants to make or other things that he's thought of as he's heard me talk, and then we'll be happy to open up for questions.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you all for joining us today. And I want to, so just a few quick logistics elements. After this webinar completes, it will be recorded. We will post it to the CCG website so you can return and enjoy this time and time again with your family. But we'll also post out the sort of an overview of this and a template for that just describes what you're seeing on the screen of what is asked of you. Now, the thing that I think is really important to note, and I think Dr. Denley really hit the nail on the head, is by and large this is not a way of getting new work, but to see your work in a new way. And one of the new ways that I think we really are going to be looking for, and particularly as we roll this into upperclassmen and other areas, is how does this work integrate across units in your institution? Some of this work may live entirely in academic affairs, and we appreciate that some of that is true, but I've already had conversations with campuses where their work is reaching from an academic affairs unit out into areas of career services or student life, and those are really important connections on campus to think about as we think about the work we do from a student's perspective. The student engages with the school as a single unit, and we tend to engage from our own positions. So in many ways, your plan is a model for linking and connecting the work that you already do, and also the work that you sort of see where you need to go in order to resolve those the points at which your students fail to maintain their momentum after the momentum year, how you will help them get there. There is going to be a structured format to go into place. It will be emailed back to the ccg@usg web email. That goes to 3 different people. You will get when you send it in. It comes in as a Microsoft Word file. You will get a response from somebody within the CCG team within hopefully just minutes, but possibly hours. We are a 24/7 shop. And I want to sort of, again, look back at this, that this is intended to have a high degree of strategic alignment for you. We want this to integrate into the work you do, but we also want this to be a way that you can review the work that is underway on your campus through a momentum lens across all elements of your campus. And sort of the last bit I'll add is that this really does build from the work that was done at the Momentum Summit too. We sent a lot of people. There are 500 people from our system across all sectors and across all departments, and we had a great representation there. And that's really good fodder for what sort of work does your campus already see it could do. And I encourage you to use those responses and use those conversations you had coming back to see how that work goes through. And so with that, again, I'm your point of contact for all of the sort of logistics and structural questions. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about that. But I want to go ahead and give you all a little bit of time to raise your hands. I think you can probably speak up, but if not, we can also see you in a chat box if that's easier for y'all to say if there's any questions related to the development proposals. Where's chat? Oh, here it is. The one thing I want to be, we were very intentional. We actually, so a little window into the world of USG System Office. We were very intentional about calling this a development plan. We had gone back and forth on what this would mean, and the idea of this is we are entering into somewhat terra incognita. We are on the frontier of where this work goes. So we are really developing the ideas and the data, and part of the reason behind the idea of how you'll do measurement is these need to be interventions we can tell will work before we start to try and scale them across institutions. Right. So the way I want you to think about your work and approach this work is really very much that you are developing the understanding of how a momentum approach applies to students across all levels for the benefit of all schools in the system. You may be working on them for your institution, but we are really hoping that as we roll this forward, that some of this work, much of this work, becomes scalable across institutions so that other institutions can benefit and learn. So the question comes in, how should we differentiate this plan from the work we've done over the last year with the Momentum Year plan? Again, part of this I would expect that the Momentum Year plan is a document that we've asked for sort of implementation and evidence of implementation and monitoring of that work. Momentum Year is limited to first-year students, and the Momentum approach stretches again across the breadth of the student's life cycle, the depth of the institution, and the granularity of student groups. So they They don't differentiate entirely because you would not expect that these be separate and they should be integrated processes. They may overlap, but they will be. These programs will probably affect a host of different students.
Second question was, when will we receive a listing of the Catapult courses? I should be able to get that out today, actually. We have the interface for Catapult courses by campus. I also have a new interface for Catapult courses in each particular program, and I should be able to get that out later today. So thanks for that question. All righty.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions,
yeah,
look for an email from me with this with the information on the approach, the development plan this afternoon. If you don't receive it, it's slightly different. We have an email. So if you received a draft template, a few of you would have seen a draft template. It is only slightly different. There's just a little bit more granularity to it, but not substantially more. So if you've received a template, your work is not lost, but there will be a little bit more detail we may be asking. As we roll this program forward, we realized that there's just a little bit more that we wanted to separate out so that we made sure we were able to use this in a scalable form.
Yeah.
So look for that. I think that may only apply to 2 or 3 institutions who were very eager about their work, and we appreciate your eagerness. Unfortunately, there's a penalty for being first out of the box.
But not much.
But not much of a penalty, a modest penalty. Like I said, I'll get that. I will try and capture all the participants here so we can get that out to everybody who's on this, as well as all of the provosts will get this, and all of your CCG contacts who will get this on campus.
Well, with that, we'll respect your time, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Bye now.